So, you've just finished everything on your plan to watch list and are looking for some new things to... Wait a minute, who the fuck ever finishes their plan to watch list? Anyways, imagine this. You've just finished a series and are now looking for something else you can read instead of trying to finish your plan to watch list. So what do? Well, it's pretty easy. Just watch this video. As someone who enjoys every single type of manga, whether it be psychological, romance, or ecchi, I'm sure that there will be at least a couple of manga on the list that would appeal to anyone watching the video. If not, at least watch the entire video and all the summaries I provided to see if anything interests you. I'll add a hashtag to the manga down below that I think really deserves a read. By far, the weirdest series of tags on this list between comedy and horror is none other than Mieruko-chan. Anyways, this story revolves around the typical high school girl Miko, who one day realizes that she is able to see monsters that no one else is able to see. But hold on, if you thought that this sounds like another girl sees things no one else can story, that's not the case with Mieruko-chan. Rather than acknowledging the monsters, Miko tries to go about her daily lives, ignoring the monster's existence. She needs to do this in order to keep herself and her friend Hana out of danger. For me, I think the strongest part of this manga is the artwork. The contrast between the horde-like monsters and the moe characters really shows how fucked it would be if we were in Miko's position. I mean, come on, if I started seeing monsters out of nowhere, there's no way in hell I would ever be able to keep quiet. The most amount of criticism I see when reading any horror manga is the plot. Horror is usually known to have very abstract and creepy artwork, which tends to give zero room for the plot. However, Mieruko-chan does not fall into this category. Each chapter tells a different story that adds to the overarching plot, which I won't spoil. The characters receive a lot of development, and I'd say read up till chapter 4 if you want to give this manga a shot. Never judge a book by its cover, as seen with this thug on chapter 4. Protect this guy at all costs. Moving on, have you ever imagined what ReZero would look like if it wasn't an isekai? Well, boy do I have the treat for you, as Summertime Render makes its way as one of the most bingeable series on this list. Basically, the story revolves around a guy named Shinpei who returns home upon learning that Ushio Kofune, one of the sisters that he lived with before, has died. After holding the funeral, Shinpei begins to notice that something is wrong. Realizing that the bruises around Ushio's neck signal a sign of strangulation, Shinpei and the other sister Mio start searching for another girl that has gone missing in the area in hopes of finding the killer. What Shinpei doesn't know, however, is that this whole area seems to be affected by what is called the Shadow Disease, a disease spread onto the island known to create copies of the citizens. With this limited information, Shinpei and Mio head into the forest only to come across a woman who looks like she's been shot. Upon stating the words, "that thing," Shinpei turns around only to see that Mio is being held hostage by a clone. She is then shot in the head, with Shinpei following the same fate, only for him to wake up in the same spot at the beginning of the story. Pause. Like I said earlier, it's basically ReZero without the isekai. To me, this manga was hella entertaining and definitely a fun read. The characters are pretty smart and craft strategies in order to break the loop and beat the shadows. While I don't think that this story is particularly deep in any way, I don't think that that's the proper way to view the story. Summertime Render is meant to be a thriller, keeping you on your seat for every chapter, and I'm sure that the series accomplishes this goal. If you love mystery or thriller, then by all means check out this story. They also announced an anime in the future, so I'm really excited for that. Next, we have what I think is the best manga to come out of 2020, which is Sousou no Frieren, or Frieren at the Funeral. What would happen if you were an immortal being in a mortal world? Frieren at the Funeral follows the story of Frieren, an elf who has a considerably longer lifespan than her human counterpart. Coexisting in a world with humans, as her journey progresses, she begins to realize the value of life. These types of stories are definitely one of my favorites to read. Akin to shows like To Your Eternity, Violet Evergarden, and Makia, the main character progresses throughout the story, learning through life and death. It's the experiences that changes a person. Remember when I said back in a previous video that To Your Eternity has probably the best first episode and chapter I've ever seen? Well, Frieren at the Funeral's first chapter is also a banger as well. That being said, if you were to check the manga out, I would suggest reading through the first 13 chapters before you decide to drop it, since that's when the story actually starts progressing. The art is no less than spectacular, and the development of Frieren, while slower than other characters, is still amazing nonetheless. In contrast is the next series, Bokurano. If Frieren at the Funeral is an emotional and bittersweet manga, then Bokurano is the complete polar opposite. It's depressing and one of the most demoralizing manga you can read. What would happen if the fate of the world lied in the hands of 15 children? In Bokurano, 15 middle school students who attended a summer camp were selected to fight for their world's future. For their planet to survive, they must win 15 consecutive fights by piloting a giant robot. Except here's the catch. Whoever pilots the robot will die after the fight, meaning that if they do end up saving the world, every single one of them will die. Pause. I'm not gonna lie, I actually felt a sense of dread just reminiscing about the manga. It's probably one of the most nihilistic and depressing things I've ever read. So why would I recommend this manga to anyone? It's because I think that experiencing all types of stories and opening yourself up to anything new is something that everyone should do. It's why I read all types of stories. The strength of Bokurano stories lies in its characters. You see, Bokurano at its core is 15 different stories. There are 15 different arcs for each student. If you love stories that focus on character development, I would strongly suggest you to check Bokurano out. But as a warning, you should probably be in a good mental state while reading the story. Anyways, I didn't mean to get all depressing, but let's transition to a less nihilistic and more realistic mood with the next series. We Were There. Now I know a lot of people don't like shoujo as a genre, but let me tell you something. Shoujo is fucking awesome. I'll probably do another What Exactly is Shoujo for a future video, just like my What Exactly is Shonen video, but as a forefront, if you go into a shoujo manga expecting hype action scenes or fast pacing, then you're expecting something that the genre isn't meant for. You see, the appeal of shoujo is in its character development. Almost all shoujo stories lie heavily on the characters and nothing else. That is exactly the motto that We Were There follows. It's the realistic representation of two people in a relationship. Love is painful, and We Were There explores the ups and downs within a relationship between two characters. To me, I think this is one of the best written romances I've ever read. That being said, I want to warn you guys before reading the manga that the pacing I felt was pretty slow and the art can definitely be a turnoff for most people. But if you're someone who just wants a good story and characters you can empathize with, then I would strongly suggest you to check it out. While we're on the same topic of shoujo, comes the next series, Bokura No Kiseki. I'ma be honest here, how the fuck is this series not more popular? This was a series that was recommended to me by a friend, and if not for him, I would have never known about the manga. The plot is pretty simple. What would happen if you reincarnated in a new world, and how much would you want to find out about your past? I say that the plot is quote unquote simple because while on the outside you're probably like, hell yeah, reincarnation. As the story progresses, the plot gets pretty complex. Minami, the main character, starts the story by having reoccurring dreams of being the Princess Veronica. But here's the catch. The only thing he is able to remember is that the castle in which she ruled over was invaded and destroyed. As Minami slowly gains her memories back, so do his classmates, and here's the interesting part. Some of the classmates belong to the troops who invaded Veronica's castle, while others worked for Veronica. The story focuses on the tension between students and classmates, and the whole manga becomes a mystery about finding out who is who and trying to figure out what exactly happened on that day at the castle. It's like finding the missing pieces to a puzzle. What I personally found really awesome about this manga is that it highlighted the burden one must carry when regaining the memories of others. Do you act as if those memories are a part of you, and if so, how do you change anything? Man, this manga was such a banger, and the community was amazing as well. There were subtle hints throughout each chapter pointing to the identity of other individuals, and there were tons of theories crafted within the community that turned out to be true. If you love mystery, then I would strongly suggest you to check the series out. Next, we have a bit of a trash taste manga with Can You Just Die My Darling coming in as a fun read. Following the protagonist Taku, the story begins with a disease spreading throughout Japan, causing people to have murderous thoughts of their loved ones. After being infected, their physical limitations increase immensely and their desire to kill their loved ones grows stronger. It's basically your typical apocalyptic story that is bound to keep you entertained for every chapter. While I wouldn't classify this series as having particularly good writing, boy was it fun as hell to read. Also, the characters are all badass, especially Nebu. Seriously, all shonens have that one character that no one hates. In JJK, it's Gojo, and in Chainsaw Man, it's Aki. But most importantly of all, we also have Nina 2.0 in this manga, so if you hated her in Code Geass, get ready to hate her as much in this manga. There's a ton of gore, action sequences, and the art is pretty hype as well. Call me a shonen tard or whatever you want, but I would definitely read this series 10 out of 10 times. I'd say give the manga at least 4 chapters to decide if it's right for you. Moving on to the next series is a new webtoon that came out in 2020, Your Throne. Yeah, I know, the title said 10 manga you should read, but I really want to add this one in because I feel like it fits well with the overall list. Your Throne starts off with the protagonist Medea seeking revenge against Psyche for taking her position as the queen. After diving into a fountain with Psyche, they somehow manage to switch bodies and start living their lives as each other. What they don't realize, however, is that people aren't as they seem. Throughout the story, the two characters learn about the hardships that the other experienced, and boy oh boy does this manhwa get interesting as the story progresses. What seems like a simple revenge story turns into a deep 500 IQ fight between Medea and the other characters. There's a lot to say about this manhwa, and I would conclude that it's a very solid read. The art is fantastic, and Medea has become one of my favorite female protagonists to date. If you don't know what manhwa or webtoons are, I'd say this is a pretty good starting story to get yourself into the medium. Transitioning to a more controversial read is Suicide Island. I use the word controversial because I've heard people say that it's the best thing they've ever read, while others have a ton of criticism for the series. Personally, I think both points are valid. There are some good scenes mixed with some questionable writing as well. Suicide Island is set in a world where the government sends all suicidal patients onto an island. I know, the title tells you exactly what the story's about, right? From the author of Holy Land, this manga takes a harsher, realistic approach in its writing. While I definitely feel that the main character doesn't mesh as well with the entire setting, Suicide Island has a great commentary exploring human nature. The seinen genre usually has no restrictions when it comes to writing, and Koji takes full advantage of it. There are things in this world that aren't so simple, and Suicide Island takes the idea of good and evil and tosses it out the window. But that's not me saying that I agree with everything the author writes about. There are many horrendous scenes in the manga that I would never agree with in real life, but remember, manga is a medium used to explore human ideas, and whether it's through digestible and easygoing content or harsh, non-filtered scenes, it's the exploration of the story that matters. I would say give this story a shot if you're someone who likes seinen in general. Next, we have the shortest series on this list, I Too Saw the Same Dream. It's really hard to say anything about the plot without going into spoilers, but I'll just say this. This story is a must-read. As you guys all know, I'm a big fan of short manga. Stories like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, 3 Days of Happiness, and Our Happy Hours are able to create relatable characters focusing on one common theme. What is happiness? From the same author as I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, the theme of happiness is explored throughout the story, this time through 3 different characters of all ages. We follow the story through our main character Nanoka as she meets 3 different women while going out for a walk. It's a great mix between happiness and depression, and like I said before, it's only 12 chapters long, so I would strongly suggest you to read the manga. It can't possibly take up much of your time. Now, as we make our way to the last manga, I want to say that for this story, I went in expecting nothing and came out finding gold. The manga at question is Insomniacs After School. Looking at the title, you might be expecting some sort of generic slice of life story that wouldn't be all that compelling. I mean, come on, what depth can come out of a story about insomniacs? However, that's definitely not the case when you start reading the manga. Following the unexpected meeting between Isaki and Ganta, the two forge an unlikely friendship as they help each other cope against insomnia. What I like a lot about this manga is that the story is constantly progressing. Usually with a lot of romance or slice of life stories, there comes a period where you feel like nothing's happening. Maybe they introduce a bunch of side characters that have no effect on the main cast, or maybe there's 100 chapters of filler after what seemed to be the final arc. Rent a Girlfriend. Insomniacs After School, at its core, is a story about 2 insomniacs. Nothing else. No side characters and no filler. Everything revolves around them as we watch the 2 complete daily activities while being affected by insomnia. The story is really good at pulling the readers in, and we begin to feel invested, wanting to see both characters fall asleep. If you love slice of life, I would strongly suggest you to check this manga out, and even if you don't like the genre, this is a pretty good story to get you down the SOL path. As a reminder, down below I put the names of all the manga I listed in the video and put a hashtag beside the ones that I really think you guys should check out. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you have any other series you would like me to recommend, comment down below. Also, I'm still working on the What Exactly Is series, so be on the lookout for that. The next video will either be taking a look at seinen or shoujo as a genre. As a reminder, these videos take a lot of time to make, so I would appreciate it if you could subscribe. This channel is run all by myself, which means I do all the editing and script writing. It's why I only post every 10 days, and if you want to help the channel out, telling your friends or other people about this channel is the best way to help me grow. And as always, this has been Hyacinth. Peace.